like the beat drop there. Welcome into another edition of the Wolves Den Jaybird, like we always are. And we finally got our good friends here, Jeff Reed from the AStateNation, what are you guys, 24/7 now? The 24/7 site for Arkansas State. I still want to call you guys Scout. That's old school right there.
It's been a while, but yeah, you're right. When you're that for a few years and then you make a switch, yeah, it changes things.
It does. So we finally got him in on the action here, and we'll kind of get some of his thoughts here in just a second. But let's revisit last week. And like I said, it's always better to come in here to the Den, coming off of a win, taking on Louisiana Monroe. A lot at stake here, and really this kind of set the tone of the day there. You see that? That defensive line, boy, they were at it. And then Justice doing what Justice does, Kirk Merritt doing what Kirk Merritt does, bingo, bango, big-time score, start this thing off. Now, it took him a little bit to kind of get going, but that's okay. But, you know, when your defense is doing stuff like this right here, against a very good mobile quarterback at that, again, Caleb Evans there, finding Josh Peterson there, 34 yards. I mean, he's a good quarterback. That's going to happen there. Kirk Merritt, his second of the day, getting things rolling. Right there, 17-7, and then, you know, I mean, just poor Caleb Evans. You feel for him. Roe Bingham right there, just suffocating. Roe Bingham again, and he gets the pick there. And then Justin Clifton, he had him a day. In fact, gets the pick six here, part of a 2-interception day that earned him Player of the Week from the defensive side. But Caleb Evans doing what Caleb Evans does, trying to keep it close, cuts the lead to 10 right there. But then Arkansas State just marches on, and when you see plays like that, it kind of freezes things up. But that's okay, because that is electric. Man, oh man, Kendrick, it's good to see him back in the mix of things. He's had a rough year, been dealing with some injuries, but it was so good. We're going to show it to you again from a different angle. Just throw it up for the big fella. Look at that. I mean, that is product placement. Get the sale on Windex, because he's finding the windows. All right, later in that same drive here, Justice still dealing like a blackjack dealer. Actually, I take it back. That's Kirk Merritt on the run. Reverses field altogether. And that is something that I'm glad Arkansas State has finally figured out with this guy. Get him the ball. Jeff, we were talking about that beforehand here. Get that guy the ball, because he can do some things here. Now Justice dealing. Another stupid catch. Kirk Merritt feeling himself there. And then Justice kind of doing what he does here. Finds Justin McInnis. Moose. The great Yukon, whatever you want to call him. Great catch there. And that kind of ended things there. For all intents and purposes, defense still flexing out there. Third pick on the day for them. And, you know, poor Caleb Evans. I mean, they really schemed him up good in this one. We talked about last week. You had to try to contain that fella. And Arkansas State did just that. Clifton there kind of puts the icing on the cake. Again, his second interception. Throw the stats up there for me, guys, because we got a lot to digest here. Arkansas State, there you go, 400 yards, or over 400 yards, I should say. ULM only 275. You see that 58 there? That is 58 yards rushing. Hansen, very efficient in this one, 21 of 27, 246. Had the hat trick there. Marcel Murray going over 100 yards. Kirk Merritt, you saw plenty of him on that one. And then that defense, that's 3 straight now for them to hold their opponent under 300 yards. Some other defensive stats. Throw it to the next one there for me, guys. Yeah, there you go. They held it Green in check. 5 catches, 69 yards. He was the leading receiver coming into this thing. Evans, you see all his numbers there. 17 of 28. He had 2 TDs, 1 running. You saw that one there. 3 picks, though. It's good to see that out of defense. Only 63 yards rushing. Really 39 net yards if you take all the sacks into account. But for the most part, held him in check. And there you go, the 3 sacks there, 7 tackles for loss. And I think this is missed by a lot of folks here. 0 punt return yards. They had 6 punts on the day, 4 of which went for a fair catch. And then they dominated the time of possession. But I want to get your take on here because, like I said, I don't think a lot of people really give Cody Grace his due.
Oh, gosh.
And he got slept on for the Ray Guy Award, which that really upset me.
Here's the thing about, and I'm sure a lot of that happens, is you have a guy like people who vote on this award, they look, well, he's only averaging 40.2 yards per kick.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that, or they don't look close enough, I think, that half of his kicks have been down inside the 20. You know,
Yeah.
like last week he had one down at the 1, another one at about the 15.
Yeah.
And when the defense coordinators love that. When the offense has to go a long way to score, you know, or as Joe Cawthon said, when you got a lot of field to defend, you like it. You know, you don't like it when you had to defend a whole lot and they're easy within scoring range. But Cody is just his hang time. He is a master with the punt and can do. It's really hard to describe unless you watch him game in and game out, and what all he can do with the football.
And I mean,
and think about it. Last Saturday was only like his 22nd football game ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he grew up playing Australian rules football and stuff like that. And we actually did a little piece on him that's on the website right now, and he is just really. He is a weapon. There's no question about it. He is a weapon.
He is a Sunday punter soon enough, absolutely. And then, you know, that's something that, he punts. No, like Jeff said, this guy, he puts it in the 20. He's very precise with the punts, and that thing, it just hangs. So they're actually the #2 team in the country in terms of average return yardage in the punt game.
Well, I did a little research last night. This year, return yardage for Arkansas State is -13 yards. Last year it was 8. So in 2 years they've gotten -5 yards out of all these punt returns. So yeah, the fair catch is usually the way to go.
Absolutely. Here. All right, let's take a look at the current standings now. Arkansas State really put themselves back in this thing. There you see a little bit of a logjam there at the top with Arkansas State and the Louisianas. ASU sitting at 7-4, so things are starting to trend upward, and then Texas State and South Al kind of bringing up the rear here. So a lot still yet to be decided, but we do know likely that Arkansas State will go bowling. We got a lot of projections here, so let's kind of roll through those here quickly. USA Today has them in the New Orleans Bowl against North Texas. That would be fun. Would also mean that they won the conference title. Go ahead and throw those up there for me, guys. ESPN has them in the Cure Bowl versus Southern Miss. That would be a good one there, too. Also in the Dollar General versus Northern Illinois. Stadium has them in the Zona Bowl there against San Diego State. And SB Nation has them in this one was different here, the First Responder Bowl versus North Texas. And that one would be out of the conference tie-in, so that one's a little different there. You see a couple Arizona Bowls there versus Fresno State, CBS and SI. Cure Bowl versus SMU, Bleacher Report. Arizona Bowl there again. You see San Diego State. And then the Orlando Sentinel has them in the Cure Bowl versus Tulane. So you're kind of all over the map here. What's your vibe here on potential landing spots?
Well, I think probably New Orleans is a long shot. For one thing, you got to have some things happen Saturday.
Yeah.
To allow you the chance to go to the conference championship game. And then once you do that, you're facing a trip to Troy or a really long drive to Appalachian State the first weekend of December up in the mountains.
Ooh,
you have no idea what kind of weather you're going to get there.
Not at all.
So I think that's kind of I think the Cure or the Arizona Bowl would be my guess right now.
Right.
You got a team from Alabama that I'm sure one of the Alabama Bowls would like to get, and Georgia Southern's not too far away, so they could swing over to Alabama, or they could swing down to Orlando.
Yeah.
You'll just have to see, but I really think that probably the one thing, right now I would guess Orlando or Arizona.
All right, so there you have it. Still, like I said, there's still a lot to be decided. Still got a shot at that New Orleans Bowl. You mentioned that. So here's what's got to happen come Saturday. Obviously, Arkansas State has to win their game against Texas State. We'll talk about that here in just a few. But they also have to have Louisiana Monroe beat ULL. So that's still on the plate as well. And those two teams, it's a rival game. No idea what's going to happen in that one. I believe the game is in Monroe, so that kind of maybe helps out Arkansas State a little bit there. But that is definitely one you're going to have to set the dials for. I believe that's a 1 o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Arkansas State's 3, so you have a little bit of idea there.
All right, and speaking of Arkansas State, let's talk about them a little bit here, going from last week. Like I said, schemed up Caleb Evans. It's something that they've had a problem with in the past, is the mobile quarterback. What did you notice that really kept him in check? Because he has been a problem for teams.
Yeah. Well, one thing that they did is they put a lot of pressure on the front four of the defense to help control the run game.
Right.
And I got a feeling that watching the videos and scouting that they figured we're better up there than they are. Okay. So then you made some subtle moves. You moved Caleb Bonner to the Mike, the middle linebacker, and then you put Darian Jackson, who's been at safety at the wheel. Two mobile, faster type guys to kind of play behind that line of scrimmage, and they really eliminated the big plays out of Evans. And then with Marcus Green, who you pointed out earlier had 80-something yards receiving. This is a guy that last year went more than 400 yards against Arkansas State. And,
he went nuts.
And I mean, he is a big-time player who does that to everybody. They basically double-teamed him on every play, except some sets where Jerry Jacobs, ASU's best corner, had him man-to-man.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and to hold him to 80 yards, no kick returns, no punt returns, that was a phenomenal performance. And as Blake Anderson said after the game, he said it was kind of a collective team effort. Everybody contributed, and you needed everybody to contribute because that was a pretty good offensive football team.
Yeah, and what is it about this defense as the season's gone along here? Because early on, I mean, geez, they were good but not good at the same time. They were kind of susceptible to the big plays. We haven't seen a whole lot of that really since the Appalachian State game. Now, granted, the quality of opponent could be taken into account with that, but, you know, offenses like the Louisianas have been pretty explosive. Coastal Carolina is no slouch, plus they do a lot of weird misdirection type stuff. What have you noticed out of this defense that's evolved as the year's gone on?
I think one thing that's happened, and basically the first unit of William Bradley King, Raheem Bingham, Forrest Merrill, and Kevin Thurman, that's as good a defensive line as there is in the league, and a lot of college football teams would love to have those guys. The weather's gotten cooler. They're not having quite as many snaps. Those guys can play more. And Raheem Bingham, number 8, is just
mercy.
He is a highlight film. Last week, and he was robbed of a sack on a play.
You may remember
that even the replay showed the quarterback's knee was down, and then he threw it. And we asked Raheem about it in the press conference, and he said they're just trying to keep me from being great. but believe me, the guy is already great, and he is so good, and he is just and I tell you something that Monroe did. Teams had gotten to the point where they would not go drop back pass against Arkansas State. They figured we can't block that rascal, and they couldn't. But Monroe tried that, and you saw what happened. I mean,
wreaking havoc.
He owned Evans, and it was really to A-State's advantage that he did that, because I mean he was really his game has just gotten better. And what he does, he is so good on his side that he pushes stuff the other way and lets other guys make plays. And I mean, he's really quite a difference maker.
Well, and too, with the evolution of some of these other guys, it's not like with Javon in years past where you can kind of double team him, sort of neutralize things a little bit. You can't really sacrifice even these other guys you mentioned, you know, Forrest and some of the other fellas that are really Kevin Thurman has really started to emerge.
Here's an interesting stat: Forrest Merrill, who's a nose guy, has 4 sacks.
That's pretty good as a nose guy.
It's really an incredible stat that your nose man has 4 sacks. But those two inside guys, he and Thurman, are really good, and they stabilize. They keep your linebackers clean where they can run and make tackles. And then you've got William Bradley King and Griffin Riggs is in there, and Raheem on the edges, and they're just playmakers. And it's really, and this is something that Coach Joe Cawthon, the defense coordinator, told us. He said, we will be better in time. You know, so now you've got 11 games where really people who once were freshmen, they're really no longer freshmen, they're sophomores by this point.
You've grown up a little.
And they've gotten good play at the corners. Jerry Jacobs has established himself as a corner that you can say, go sick 'em, and you don't have to worry about that side of the field. Then you can do things with the other guys. Justin Clifton's playing at a high level. I mean, there's just really some guys that things are starting to come together for this team that they weren't quite there a month ago.
Right. And it's been fun to kind of watch the evolution now. It's kind of a bummer that you had to take some lumps, but I think it's always one of those things in due time you kind of start to see the fruits of that labor, if you will. Let's switch to the other side of the ball here. This offense has finally become the product that everybody expected at the beginning of the year. Had some hiccups in there, and obviously too, we talked about this a lot earlier in the season, just a little bit too of just the product of what the defenses were doing. Obviously, in that Tulsa game, that 3-3-5 is a little tricky. UNLV kind of did the same thing, dropping guys back. But it seemed like that App State game, there was really no offensive identity, and really ever since then, they've kind of gotten back to what they do, and that's fling the ball. And we see a lot more vertical throwing. What have you noticed there offensively?
Well, I think a lot of the App State issue was the fact that App State was a really good defensive football team.
They are.
And at the same time, I think A-State was searching a little bit at that time. But things have started to click. Justice Hansen has gotten, they talked about keeping him comfortable. I haven't exactly asked him what that term means, but obviously the last 3 weeks, if you look at his number, he's completing like 75% of his passes and no interceptions and 8 TDs. He's obviously comfortable, but you got playmakers like, of course, Marcel Murray in the run game has,
Oh, that's been huge.
I don't know when's the last time I've seen a true freshman that is as good.
Maybe Reggie Arnold.
Well, I think Reggie was a redshirt freshman by the time he got to play. This is a guy that, 8 months
high school.
A year ago was playing Georgia high school football, and Georgia high school football is very good, but it's not college D1 football. So, and he's an exceptional guy, just great balance, strength, and not sprinter speed, but he's fast, but he's so explosive. I mean, boom, boom. He can play. Kirk Merritt, I really think, has gotten, like, and I talked earlier about JUCO guys or transfer guys. They kind of have to. It takes a little while of playing games before things start to click. Well, they're really clicking for him.
Yes.
Both as the coaching staff is how to get him the ball, and what he sees and what he does.
Right.
And he's really good. Justin McInnes has just been there the last 2 years.
Oh,
I mean,
man,
the guy's got incredible hands, and now they've had to work around some issues. Tight end is kind of like, who wants to play tight end this week? Because of the injuries.
Those poor guys.
Reed Tyler will probably be the only true tight end out there this week, and like I said, he's a true freshman from Mississippi.
They're throwing some kids out there.
And but they've been having some tackles come over and line up in certain situations. But and the other receivers that have done a good job of complementing the playmakers, and I think it's just a situation where everything has really, the coaches have figured out who can do what best, how the offensive line can best block for these plays, and Justice is comfortable, and everything is coming together, and obviously it's at a good time because say you beat Texas State and Monroe beats Lafayette, and all of a sudden you're in the title game, you want to be playing at a high level.
Yeah, they seem to be peaking. I've noticed too, and you kind of alluded to this, keeping Justice comfortable, because when he just has time to scan the field, he'll pick you apart. Also, the evolution of this running game that was just such an issue earlier in the year. I know they've kind of shuffled some guys up there at O-line. What have you noticed, and kind of have you noticed anything beyond the personnel, maybe something schematically?
No, it's I think it's a lot of the same stuff. I think a lot of it is just guys that are getting to play some, and Nordine Sonali, who was the tackle. Yeah. Now he's out now because he's got a torn ACL, MCL, and had surgery. Was really starting to play at a very high level. And like I said, he's the guy that hasn't played a whole lot of football to begin with. JUCO guy sat out last year, and then he got the starting job this year. And he's new, and you got Andre Harris, big freshman, redshirt freshman guard that's playing.
The big goof.
Like I said, a lot of these guys are starting to come together, and they're starting to figure out things that work, and they're plugging in tackles. Dutton, the redshirt freshman from Oklahoma, filled in for Sednally last week, and coaches said he played well. Now, there were some issues against Monroe that the running game didn't quite click till late, but they figured those out. And I think it's just maybe an effective passing game, too, opens up the run game.
Yeah, they kind of complement.
Then you got to figure out how you're going to let these guys beat you.
Right. Yeah, so it's been fun to kind of watch some of that, despite some of the growing pains, and I think down the road this will really help when you see some of these redshirt freshmen starting to get into that junior year. I think it'll be a little more smooth sailing when it comes to that. All right, let's look ahead to Texas State there's needless to say, there's some issues going on down there. But traveling down to San Marco, ESPN Plus game, Arkansas State favored by a couple of touchdowns in this one. This team is interesting to me, this Texas State team. I think one of the keys to this one, though, they got to bring their own hype. Arkansas State does. We've seen it before in really the year that they're having. Stadium's going to be a little dull. And I know a lot of times teams will feed off even that road energy of, oh, you suck and all that kind of good stuff. But got to bring the hype. What do you think of that?
Well, there's no doubt you got to have your own mojo, because
yeah, especially in this one.
It's going to be it's after Thanksgiving. I'm sure the students that might normally go that were around they're gone home to all corners of the world, and so you have that. You got this coaching change. You don't know what you're going to get from the team. Is this going to be something that's going to make them all angry and kind of galvanize them?
Yeah.
Or are they just going to go out there and the first time something goes wrong, they're just going to shut it down and quit? They're a very good defensive team, and if you look through their numbers, they're pretty solid defense. Offensively, they have problems, and they're young. So, but you just don't know how they're going to react to the coaching change, and that's the big if. Normally, they'll play well sometimes, but then most of the time, I'd say that it's a train wreck that's probably going to go off the track.
Man, it's going to be interesting. You also mentioned some of the other chaos. Supposedly, their athletic director was kind of trying to address the team with some of these things, and supposedly things got a little heated. Players are, hollering at him. He had to be escorted out. So it's just a hot mess down there right now at Texas State. You mentioned the defense. I think really this team will have to establish the passing game in order to really get going. And in fact, the passing defense for Texas State, not too bad. Only allowing 195 per game. That puts them 29th in the country. They really don't allow a whole lot of explosive plays. In fact, in the past, only 81 of those on the year, and these are 10 or more yards type of plays. That puts them 28th in the country. So they've got some guys in that defensive secondary that can lock you down. Now, they don't generate a whole lot of pressure up front in terms of sacks and all that kind of good stuff. They've only got 13 on the year, so that puts them way down in the rankings for that. And then also tackles for loss. I lost my place here. There they go. They've only generated 53 of those, and that puts them in the hundreds. So what does Arkansas State have to do to really get this passing game going? Because it looks like Justice will probably have some time, barring any radical changes that the new head coach might bring in.
Well, I don't think the new head coach is the defensive coordinator. So I think things will stay the same there for them defensively. Yeah. You've got to – I think A-State will go about their normal business and then kind of peck around and see what happens. Mm-hmm. I haven't looked at them enough to see what exactly where they're susceptible. Yeah. The secondary, the passing numbers are not bad, but then again, the interesting thing about that is they don't have a lot of sacks. So it would make you think either teams aren't throwing a lot against them or not having to throw a lot against them, or they do a pretty good job coverage and containing. So we'll see what happens there, but I think A-State has a lot of offensive weapons that they might haven't had to contend with in a while. So
yeah, and especially with the addition, bringing back Kendrick Edwards, that just adds another big fella in there.
Kendrick's been out a few games and had one of the best games of his career last week. I mean, he went up and caught a couple passes and
highlight reels
and really played well. So it was it's good for him. Senior, he's almost done. Sometimes senioritis does things to guys.
That's right.
when they see the end of the road there, it kind of brings about a little more urgency.
Another thing, I think a key to the game, and you might be thinking, well, duh, Jay, score points. But, this is a team that held Troy in pretty good check last week. I mean, only held them to 4 field goals. And this is a Troy team that they score points. That's what they kind of do. For Texas State, though, their scoring defense, they're only allowing about 27 a game. So that would be under Arkansas State's average. And even third downs, they just don't allow you to convert those third downs, and this is something that Arkansas State has really improved on as the year has gone on, because now they're not playing so far behind the chains because, you know,
you're right.
Obviously the evolution of Marcel Murray, Warren Wan's now starting to really cook. Justice Hansen getting back. I think score points seems simple.
Oh, yeah, and that's a good stat that you pointed out is the third down conversions.
Yeah.
I mean, at one time, ASU was way down there, and they've gotten closer and closer, and they've moved up, and their numbers have just really been off the charts almost, over 50%.
Yeah, they're up to 32nd in the country.
Yeah, and that's all been done over the last 3 to 4 weeks. So
yeah.
When you convert, third down is the most important play in college football, because you're either going to maintain possession or you're going to lose possession. So, and having that success rate goes hand in hand with Arkansas State's improved offense.
All right, so there you go. So it seems easy, but hey, you got to do your thing. I think also key here, D-line, just keep doing your thing. You got to be disruptive. They will get after the quarterback. As you know, we've talked about all year, Ronnie Bingham. Those front four guys are going to generate some pressure. Texas State, like I said, offensively, they're kind of having a rough year. They tend to be susceptible to allowing some things. Let's see here if I got my stats here. Oh, okay, so they've allowed 26 sacks on the year. It's not too bad, but not really all that great. They've allowed a lot of people in their backfield. A lot of tackles for loss, over 100, or no, I'm sorry, they're over 100 in terms of ranking. They've allowed 80 on the year. So defensive line should be able to eat.
And that's why you talk about how the A-State offense has improved. Coaches, their term is playing behind the chains.
Yeah.
Which means whatever down and double digits.
Yeah.
So
if you're
if you're 10, 11, 12, 20, 30, whatever, that's not what you want. So a lot of tackles for losses, that right there could be a problem with your offense, because it puts you normally in a predictable situation of having to pass, and then the defense, they have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do, so then they're ready.
Absolutely, and also too, you kind of pointed out the offensive train wreck that is the Bobcats. A couple of guys you want to look out for, though. Tyler Vitt, their quarterback right now, 7 touchdowns, 10 picks. So I think with that pressure from up front, you could be adding to that number a little bit. Keenan Brown's kind of their go-to guy. 556 yards on the year, 47 catches. So, you know, I think it should be a pretty solid day if Arkansas State's defense shows up, does what they do. I think they'll contain Texas State pretty well.
It may turn out to be a little bit more of a defensive contest than people think, because they're not bad on the defensive side.
Pretty good, actually.
And A-State, you know, has given up 47 points in the last 3 games, and in this day and time, those defensive numbers are pretty good.
Yeah.
And Joe Cawthon even talks about a lot of times it's so much as not really a yardage statistic that's important. It's just a point statistics, because a lot of times you just try to, you know, contain them, and because offense, everything is done for them.
Yeah.
Is get them down there and let them kick field goals, and then maybe you go score a touchdown. So.
Should be interesting to watch. Also, too, on that defensive side, Brian London II, Nicholas Daniels, a couple of linebackers for him. They're 1 and 2 in the Sun Belt in terms of tackles. So those guys are busy. I think if you can contain those guys,
that could be because they're playing a lot of plays.
Playing a lot of plays, and obviously their defensive front, you know, as we talked about there with the sacks and the tackles for loss, doesn't generate a whole lot.
Usually guys that make a lot of tackles, it's because they're having to defend a lot of tackles, or you know, sometimes the basketball guys that get a lot of rebounds play with teams that miss a lot of shots.
Miss a lot of shots, exactly.
But you know, back with that statistic, if you look at the stats, the #1 defensive team in the league is Appalachian State, and they have defended fewer plays than anybody else.
They 3 and out you quite a bit, so something to be said. But I think defensively they'll probably give ASU some problems. Maybe not so much in terms of the pressure, but that secondary is pretty solid. They defend a lot of passes, and these wide receivers are going to have to go and get it this week.
Just because they're having a bad season does not mean they don't have players.
Exactly.
You know, everybody talks about Texas high school football, and to me it's kind of a mystery why that program has not been more of a contender than it should. Perhaps it needs continuity, you know. To my opinion, A-State would never be where it is, and people always talk about the 5 coaches in 5 years, and true, this is Blake's 5th year. But Steve Roberts' tenure stabilized the program.
Sure did.
And stockpiled the program with players, and then it's been able to, the new coaches have been able to carry on the winning ways. And stability and continuity in college football says a lot. Sometimes that's hard to do because if you have 1 or 2 bad seasons, then everybody, or some in Arkansas State's situation, half a season,
yeah, right.
Everybody's saying the coach needs to be fired. So, but it says a lot, and they're going to have players, and there are a lot of players in Texas, and they can get a lot of guys that probably aren't too far from home. So the team has not meshed as overall, but there will be guys that can perform.
Yeah. Yeah, they can ball in some spots, that's for sure. And we've seen some even pro-level type guys come out of that program. All right, let's go off the gridiron here. Some other things going on. Volleyball, unfortunately, their season is done. But man, they had a nice little run there in the tournament.
They did. David Rear has he battled some injuries. He had Clarissa May, who was 3-time Player of the Year, and that was good to build around. But he seemed to never have his starting unit there together. But
right.
It was a solid year, not a great year. I know he's thrilled with his recruiting class, and told me a couple of them could be like program changers. They're that good. So now when they get to Jonesboro, are they still that person, you know? And when a lot of kids, when they competition, when everybody gets as good as them or close to, they don't compete as well as they did when it was easy. So. But I think that program is in good shape. I really do.
Oh, yeah, they should be dominant in years to come. Men's hoops signed a few guys in the early signing period. They got a couple of guards: Caleb Carter out of Lewisburg, Tennessee; Malcolm Farrington out of West Palm Beach. Shout out down there. That's my old stomping grounds. And then Antoine Jackson, big-time forward, 6'7" guy out of Las Vegas. Just guess briefly, what do you make of these guys?
Well, I think what they wanted to do is the first 2 classes for Coach Pilato was kind of JUCO guys to kind of immediately plug in, and then come back and start kind of like what I said with continuity. You have your high school kids that are in the program for a long time, and it stabilizes stuff. And they've got them a point guard, they got them a shooter, you know, they got them a big guy inside. Now, part of this class is Milo Eggleston, who is transferring from Wake Forest. He's a 6'8", 6'9". Wing guy that will come in, and he'll show up in Jonesboro in December and be eligible next December. He's kind of what it was really a good situation with them because they had this 4th scholarship that opened up. They were trying to figure out what to do with it, and I was talking with Coach Pilato, and he said, well, we're probably just going to hold on to it to see what happens. And sure enough, here's a guy that wants to leave Wake Forest. Well, this time of year, a lot of kids want to transfer, but you got to find a place that's got a scholarship for you, and everybody's full because nobody's left yet.
Yeah,
you know, it's a lot different in April and May, you know, when everybody's bailing out, or a lot of guys are bailing out, and then all of a sudden you've got a spot for him. So it meshed, you know, everything went well, and he was a big-time recruit coming out of high school, and we'll see what happens. I think with this team this year, struggled some earlier. I think they'll be a lot different team by the time conference play rolls around. And I think, you know, I was asked the other day, what do I think this team should do? I think a winning season will be good. And then you've got enough coming back the next year to build on top of that.
Absolutely. A little Jekyll and Hyde, and that's kind of a product of a lot of new guys playing together and then mixing in some youth there as well.
You're right.
All right. The ladies also get one. Maya Love. Not too far up the road from them. They're in Nettleton, and she can ball.
Very good defensive player.
Yeah.
And very athletic, and Coach Boyer has kind of gone that way. And he's had the previous 2 classes. He had 2 really good classes back to back, and they're still kind of a freshman sophomore team. So they'll probably have some ups and downs. I think there'll be a winning season there. Can they contend for the conference championship regular season? Maybe not. But if you're playing well, by the time you get down to the tournament, you could be on a roll and win that rascal.
And they are athletic, probably as more athletic as they've been in the past few years. So they
really are. He had a really good freshman class, and I would say the names, but I'll forget them. But there's a girl from Chapel, there's one from PA, and there's one from Paris. All 3 in-state girls that. And then he had a transfer from Wichita State, who's a Memphis girl. So really a local flavor there.
Absolutely.
And they they form a pretty good foundation. They're all 4 sophomores, and I really think that as this season progresses, Peyton Martin's the girl from Chapel. She's already been a conference player of the week.
Yeah, she was this past week already.
And she has a chance to really be special. So we'll see what happens there. But, like I said, with the basketball teams, probably deserve a little bit of patience.
Yes. Take a deep breath, everyone. Rome wasn't built in a day. Our buddy Matt Stoll's there, up for the Sportscaster of the Year from the National Sports Media Association here in Arkansas. So hopefully our buddy there will come home with that award. He's going up against 2 other really, really classy dudes, really good talents as well, and Justin Acree. He does play-by-play for UCA, and then Phil Elson also does some stuff up there for the University of Arkansas.
Yeah, they're all good guys. Of course, obviously, around Matt the most and rooting for him to win. He's a good dude. He really is.
Love Matt.
He's a very good fellow that will help you out any way he can, and he's pretty good talking into that microphone.
Yeah, he paints a colorful picture with his words, for sure. One thing we left off of there, the golf team coming through with some big-time signings. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And a lot of times you think, golf signings, but hey, ASU is a golf school now.
It's pretty phenomenal. They have leaped from they were ranked in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And then they go up to Iowa, and they're the first non-Power 5 program to win that tournament. And now all of a sudden, boom, they jump into the top 25. Well, ASU's had programs get into the top 25 over the years and different things. These guys have gotten there, and they've stayed there.
That's the impressive thing.
And his recruiting class, he's got some internationals, and he's got
what is it? One fella from I believe it was Switzerland.
And we got another Aussie. Cody has somebody to talk to, so
throw those shrimps
on the barbie.
That's it. Let's get it going.
But yeah, so it was. Mike is he's a very personable guy, and if you're around him, he's just pleasant to be around. Now he's intense, and he sets a high standard. They kind of have this go or what, you get good or get gone slogan with their team, and we've seen that happen. There have been some guys that have gotten gone. So but what he's done with that program is pretty darn phenomenal. I mean, if you get into the top, if they stay in the top 25, they'll be in the NCAA, and it won't really matter what they do in the conference tournament, unless they just go there and just
lay an egg,
play like you and me would.
You don't want that.
But yeah, he's really good.
Definitely, really turned that program around in really what is a short time, and he's already been inducted into Hall of Fame classes, and he's done that for a reason.
Well, you kind of figured that Terry Mahajer, who hired him, might be onto something. When you think national champions in golf, you don't pick an Iowa school.
That's it.
For one thing, a good portion of the spring, there's white stuff on the ground up there, and the winter. But he won a couple national championships at junior college in Iowa, so he's quite a hire. You just kind of wonder if the phone's starting to ring. Say, hey, Mike, would you like to come coach us? Because the job he's done at A-State is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so the golf boosters really need to up the ante, if you will, there.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, that will about do it for this week. Jeff Reed coming in here. Always glad to have you in here. Where can the people find you?
Well, we're at AStateNation.com. We're on the 247 network, and we have a Twitter that's at AStateNation, I believe. And then I'm at ASU Jeff Reed. Not as much stuff on there as is the AStateNation. I act goofy on there every once in a while, but I act goofy a lot other places. So, but those are the main things, and we're out there. Try not to be too hard to find.
Absolutely. So get on there, find them out. They've got a lot of good stuff. The message board's on the 247 also as well.
We have a free side and a pay side. So
that's right. So
pay side is where we keep all the good stuff.
All the good stuff here. He's just letting us have it a little bit for free today, though. But we appreciate you coming in, brother. All right. Next week, it'll put a wrap on the regular season, so we'll see if maybe we're taking a trip to Troy. Maybe we're going to Boone. Who knows what's going to happen, but we will definitely have it for you coming up next week. So make sure you tune in here once again for the Wolves game. For Jeff Reed, I'm Jay Burr. We will see y'all next week.